Big day today. President Trump, of course, is set to meet in Alaska with President Putin. Can they find that off-ramp that the world is desperately seeking both parties involved to find? Ukraine, President Zelensky, and, of course, President Putin in Russia. We will be monitoring it all morning here on KCMO. Peter Ducey, hopefully set to join us. My old Villanova classmate there is right now live in Anchorage on Fox News, John.
Is that where they're at? I didn't know if there was a Waffle House in Ketchikan where everybody could get together.
That would be great. Could you imagine? Trump would be just on fire at the Waffle House if that's where they met. Oh, my goodness. But this could be a huge day for diplomacy in Eastern Europe, and we hope that, of course, a conclusion can be reached, whether it's today or this is the start, obviously, of winding down that Russia-Ukraine war. But it will be the top story of the day. We'll be following it all morning long on KCMO. Now, back here in Kansas City, this was a big deal when it came down yesterday. And I don't think that local media really understood the breadth and depth at which this story can impact major school districts here in the Kansas City area. So the news came down yesterday in a letter from the U.S. Department of Education that they have launched an investigation into 4 Kansas school districts, including 3 in our metro, over gender identity policies that they say violate federal law. KCK, Olathe, Shawnee Mission, and Topeka.
Of course, all in our listening area.
Yeah, all making the list. 35-page complaint that was first put forth on June 24th from the Defense of Freedom Institute that basically claimed that these schools were violating federal law, Title IX as well, claiming that the district was prioritizing gender identity over biological sex by forcing students to share intimate facilities with members of the opposite sex. Now, this story, of course, you've got the school districts who are saying, no, nothing to see here. We're just fine. Leave us alone. It's going to be A-OK. Don't you worry one bit. Well, this Department of Education is not screwing around. Chris Kobach is not screwing around, the Attorney General for the state of Kansas. And the U.S. Department of Education is saying, no, we are investigating you. That's what we are doing, and that's what their press release came out and said yesterday. They will begin looking into policies at these 4 school districts in a letter that they put out yesterday from Linda McMahon. Now, this is one of those 80-20 issues. We know that. I mean, I know there's a lot of loud voices. They're the vocal minority on this issue. As the father of 3 daughters, I do not want a biological male anywhere near my daughter's sports or locker rooms. And there are very few individuals who are like, yeah, sure, send them in. Okay, you want to talk about protecting Title IX? You want to talk about protecting young women? I mean, this would be a hill that I would die on. Literally and figuratively when it comes to this show and this issue. The notion that anybody should have to explain to their daughters why somebody with male body parts is in their locker room, is competing against them in sports, is so absurd. It's so unfair. It's inherently unfair. But we got into this weird place the last half a decade or so where suddenly that was supposed to be socially acceptable. And thank goodness the pendulum is swinging back the other way. But if you're a parent or a grandparent right now and you're listening, how could you possibly try to explain that to your child? You can't. So these school districts are all, of course, denying any violation of Title IX or federal law and claiming that they are working with parents as best they can. But there was one line that stood out to me in a statement from Shawnee Mission. Shawnee Mission put out a statement here, and it was a very, very long-winded statement. It was like 4 paragraphs from Shawnee Mission. But the Shawnee Mission line that stood out to me above the rest is that through today, they write, Shawnee Mission School District is not aware of any parent or student filing a complaint alleging that the district's practices for working with transgender students and their families violates Title IX. We, of course, stand ready to address any concerns from any Shawnee Mission School District family that comes forward. Well, is it possible that families went directly to the Attorney General's office in Kansas because they don't trust the school district based on some of its handlings of other issues? So they're feigning ignorance. That's what they're doing here. And that is not going to be a legitimate excuse when push comes to shove on this matter. It's not going to work.
Gee, officer, I didn't realize it dropped down to 15 miles per hour through here. I didn't know.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Fox 4 reported on this last night. Here's part of their report.
The complaint continues to say that at Shawnee Mission schools, guidance said that students must be able to use the locker rooms and restrooms that aligned with their gender identity, not their sex assigned at birth. When I spoke to Attorney General Kobach, he told me that's a Title IX violation.
If you try to incorporate gender identity discrimination into the definition of sex discrimination, you result in more sex discrimination because then you end up putting females in an unsafe environment in such an example as locker rooms and bathrooms. And so you end up impairing the very objective of Title IX.
Working for You, Fox 4 received responses from all 3 local districts in response to the investigation. Olathe Public Schools say that their expectation is that their staff works with parents on these student-related matters. KCK schools say they have no policy in violation of federal law, and at Shawnee Mission schools, they say they haven't gotten any complaints from students or parents about violations. But a teacher sued the district last year over its diversity and inclusion trainings. In my interview, Kobach says that gender identity material has to be run by parents first.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. It's got to be run by parents first. And that's the biggest thing, right? You have complaints about parents who are saying, hey, I didn't know my kid was using different pronouns at school than they were using at home. And at the very least, who's in charge of the kids here? Who do you want to be in charge of your children? Do you want bureaucrats being in charge and calling the shots on your kids? Or do you want it to be the parents, the grandparents? Who's in charge? That's what this question ultimately boils down to. And I genuinely believe that the vast majority of teachers in our public schools are looking out for the kids. I don't think that this is the majority. Not even close. But I think it's a small sliver of activist employees in these school districts. And the reality is, kids who are struggling, kids who are vulnerable are going to, unfortunately, potentially be drawn to some of these activist employees and teachers. I don't think it's the majority. Heck, I've got kids in one of these school districts. But I will say it's something that every single parent should be keeping a very close eye on. And it's sad that it's even come to this point. It's sad that you have a Kansas Attorney General who now is investigating these 4 school districts, KCK, Topeka, Olathe, and Shawnee Mission, for some of these Title IX violations. And that now the U.S. Department of Education puts out a letter saying, we're investigating you as well. And you may have a major problem on your hands. I'm glad they're doing it, but I take absolutely no joy in any of this happening for the school districts, for their parents, for the kids involved, and for the taxpayer. Because in the end, who's footing the bill for all this? For Kobach and the AG's office and the Department of Education investigating this, we're paying for it. And there are much better ways for our money to be spent than having to go through these Title IX investigations and potential violations. But unfortunately, it's the hand that we've been dealt in the wacko world that continues to be 2025. But I do think that this is, I don't want to say it's winding down, but I think common sense continues to prevail. It's not about a hatred of anybody. It's not about a disdain of any group. It's about protecting young women. And as the father of 3, I'll continue to die on that hill. coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. 913-408-7957 is our text line and our studio line. The mayor of Kansas City is getting set to do something today that I don't think he's ever done, as far as I can tell. And it's going to take him a while to do it. We'll tell you what that is coming up next on KCMO 95.7 FM. Took me 7-8 years to finally get on the mayor's email distribution list, but I made it. Took me a little bit, but we finally made it big time. We've only been talking to him, every week for the last 5.5 years.
Right.
But I finally...
We knew him when, too.
Yeah, exactly. He was on the show before he was the mayor. We had a good relationship. I mean, still do. But my point is, it took me forever to get on these email distribution lists. I don't think they wanted us knowing where exactly the mayor was at all times. I would always say, hey, can you guys put me on the list? Oh, yeah, sure. We got you, Pete. Don't worry about it. We'll put you on the list. And then it would be like, wait, I didn't know he was here. I didn't know he was there. And the tip-off was that one time he called us about 2 months ago when he wasn't in the United States. He was overseas. But I never asked him about it because I didn't know he was not here in Kansas City. And then I find out after the fact that I'm like, if you guys sent me the damn emails, I might know about this stuff. So today, Mayor Lucas is doing a 10-mile walk along Troost. He started 21 minutes ago at 6 a.m. sharp. Starting at 15th and Troost, walking to 95th and Troost. That's 80 blocks. And he's doing 10 miles.
Hopefully he brought a water bottle. It's going to be hot.
I'm sure he's got a Gatorade. They're going to treat this guy like it's the New York City Marathon, okay? They're going to have like water boys out there and wet towels for him to put around his neck. You know the scene, right? So,
sexy firemen in wet T-shirts with the hydrants all spraying.
Yes, exactly right. Oh, my gosh. He'll definitely have some of that. Hopefully they'll just be, normal, good-looking people out there on the fire hydrants, right? Just regular folks. So he's walking 80 blocks, 10 miles. What's the over-under on when he's going to be done? I was trying to calculate this last night. If he does 15-minute miles, which he's just walking. So if he does 15-minute miles, that will take him, 150 minutes. That's 2 hours and 30 minutes. Doesn't seem unreasonable.
I would say over because he'll probably stop and talk to people.
Oh, good point. Good point, Mark. Good point. So he starts at 6 a.m. this morning.
How far? 95th?
95th, yeah.
Bannister Road.
10 miles.
That last stretch there, last block from the last traffic signal down to 95th, not a lot of people there, so he can pick up pace.
He can close the gap quickly is what you're saying. All right, so let's say he's done by 9 o'clock this morning, give or take. Let's say 3 hours, generously 3 hours. Because at some point he's going to be like, I just got to start moving here. All right, I got to start walking. I can't be shaking hands and kissing babies all day. Plus, I don't think there's going to be a ton of people out and about along Troost at, 6, 7, 8 in the morning. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but something tells me that he's going
a few
to...
bus stops.
Yeah, a few bus stops. He's going to be moving pretty well. So why is he doing this? He's doing this to engage with community members and assess ongoing development and work in the corridor. It's a PR stunt. And that's fine. Every politician does them. But it's a PR stunt. He says here he is walking from end to end with Brandon Calloway of KC Gift. He says here, much is said of the divide. This was posted on X 43 minutes ago. Much is said of the divide, but spending time with the community that lives and thrives on Troost today, the local businesses, the residents, services, and spaces for opportunity. That is the post from Mayor Lucas 43 minutes ago. So now he's beginning the walk, starting at 15th and Troost and ending at 95th and Troost. It says here, media are invited to speak with Mayor Lucas at the starting location before the walk begins. And then, of course, you can arrange for media after the walk ends, probably at about 9 o'clock.
You might want to get a GPS on this guy. He may take the exit at 85th and go down to BB's for lunch. That'd be a break anyway. Cool off a little.
Maybe some live music. Probably too early for that down there. Oh, that's great. Now, I don't plan to put in a request because we had a robust conversation yesterday with Mayor Lucas here on KCMO. He was on CNN 2 nights ago, and of course, I didn't think he had himself a good moment at all when he went out there to CNN and they asked him, hey, do you think that the president is motivated by race when it comes to Washington, D.C., federalizing the police force, using the National Guard? And the mayor paused, and I was like, say no, say no, say no. But he didn't. He said yes. And here's what he said when I asked him about it yesterday on KCMO. Please tell me you were just playing this one up for the cameras last night.
The cities that he's calling out and the cities that he's focused on, as you mentioned, many of them black mayors. Do you think there's race driving this?
I think there is. I won't say that's like the totality of it, but I absolutely think it is.
Was that playing it up for the CNN cameras last night, Mr. Mayor? Please tell me that's the case.
It was an interesting question from Kate Bolduan. I took a moment to think about it. I mean, look, I think it is good politics for the president, and I think he picks on cities that are obviously distinct from many other American cities and towns. And so I don't divorce anything from it. I think it is not unintentional that these are largely big blue cities that he's attacked rather than Kansas City, St. Louis, Memphis, New Orleans, blue cities, but in big red states. And I do think that in some way the mayors do make a difference. I think that's just clear. I think it's politics. I didn't necessarily put a pejorative on it, but no, I do think that's part of it.
I didn't put a pejorative on it, but yeah, I mean, I think the guy's motivated by race. Come on, please. There's a lot of things you can say about decisions being made by Donald Trump. And when there's a point to criticize him, I feel like I'll do it. But this one, no. In fact, there's overwhelming evidence that not only is this good public policy, what the president is doing in Washington, D.C., he's getting support around the country. Okay, here's the problem. And you guys know that when it comes to the mayor of Kansas City, we have a good relationship and rapport. He comes on this show each and every week. But at the same time, when you think about the people who are trying to fight crime on the local level, the people in charge in this town have been failing for decades. And you have to include the current mayor in that. Well, yes, he does not directly run the police department. And no, he's not the prosecutor. He has not used his bully pulpit to promote tough on crime policies. He just hasn't done it. And while I have faith, maybe that's wrong of me, but I got faith in Melissa Johnson, the current prosecutor for Jackson County. This stuff is not going to turn around overnight. It never was. So that right there, and it was a lively conversation. If you missed it, it's up on the podcast page. Just search Pete Mundo wherever you get your podcast and find it there. That right there was one of those moments where I'm like, I know he's trying to moderate himself for maybe a future run of something, but those hits on CNN are not helping his cause. On the text line, Pete, you want Mayor Lucas to bring a water bottle on his truce walk? I hope he brought a Glock. Jeez. Tough crowd on a Friday. I've got some data to back up what we just talked about. I'll share it with you next. Yeah, too many American cities are welcome to the danger zone right now. My gosh, including Kansas City, we topped 100 homicides, of course, last weekend. It was a 16-year-old girl. Just a terrible story in her own home. And that ends up being homicide number 100, and it's still under investigation. They don't know who these thugs were, but we just now sit and wait and hope that KCPD can get a handle on who these guys were that shot and killed a 16-year-old girl who was in her home over the weekend in Kansas City during what has been the deadliest stretch over the last half decade in Kansas City history, including 2023, which saw a record at 183 homicides. So that ties into what has been a national topic of the week, and that is the crime issue. And the president of the United States deciding that he is going to use his resources, the National Guard, federalize the D.C. Police Department, and go ahead and basically tell these local folks they don't know what they're doing. So here's what's going to happen. The president of the United States, and I put this on Facebook yesterday, the president of the United States is going to prove in short order that the violent crime issues in America's major cities can be reduced very quickly if the leaders in these cities dropped their ideological garbage and excuses. That's why they're branding him a dictator on this. They don't want to have the conversation, and they don't want the folks to come to the obvious conclusion that this is not as difficult as some of them make it out to be. When they talk about root causes and all these big fancy words that are supposed to mean something that make this a lot more difficult than it's intended to be. You take the worst of the worst off the streets. You prosecute them. You throw them in prison. You will never eliminate crime, but man, you will dramatically reduce it. You will turn this thing around, whether it's in D.C. or here in Kansas City or any other major American city dealing with, rampant crime. But they want to find all these ancillary issues. They want to say it's about state gun laws, or it's about not enough investment, or if we only gave the public schools more money, or if we only had midnight basketball for the kids to go shoot some hoops instead of shoot each other at midnight, like stuff like that. If we only had those things, well, we might be able to solve this stuff, big picture. And it's just much simpler than that. It doesn't mean we can't have programs. It doesn't mean that we can't do things that encourage people to be contributing members of society. It's not saying that those things can't exist. It's just saying the first thing you have to do before any of that is have law and order. And Trump may very well prove, I believe he will in pretty short order, that this stuff is not nearly as complicated as many of these city leaders across the country make it out to be. So the first part of this is safety. That's the most important part, by the way, whether it's D.C. or Kansas City or Memphis or Little Rock or Milwaukee, Chicago, it doesn't matter. The first part about this is safety. The second part turns into the politics of this. And frankly, that shouldn't even be a factor. It shouldn't even be part of the conversation. But it is, because you have an entire political party that basically is saying what Trump is doing here in D.C. is wrong. You heard our mayor talk about that on CNN 2 nights ago. You've obviously heard this all over social media, any cable news channel you've turned on. The problem, though, is that it's actually turning out to be a major win for the president politically. And I don't think that was goal number one here. I really don't. I mean, his political opponents coming out against him on this is what has made this a political win for him. But Harry Enton on CNN, he's the guy who's like the stats, data, polling guru for CNN. And he's pretty funny. He's got a bizarre delivery. He's kind of all over the place. He talks way too fast, but he's entertaining. So I'm warming you up for this, all right? Take a big old sip of coffee right now. Take a big old gulp of coffee right now is what you got to do. You good? You got it? Okay, great. And take a listen to what Harry Enton had to say about where the president of the United States is right now when it comes to his polling on crime compared to his predecessor on the issue.
Donald Trump is like Eric Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden.
He's 26 points ahead of where Biden was. And then Harry Enton goes, pretty much every issue of Joe Biden's was his worst issue.
Come on, man.
I mean, that might get you suspended at CNN. You got to be careful, man. You got to be careful. But when Harry Enton slipped that in there on CNN yesterday, I'm sure that everybody behind the scenes, there was a gasp, an audible gasp of, you can't say that on this channel, but I loved it.
Show some RESPICT.
That was gold. So politically, he's miles ahead of where Joe Biden was. And he's also ahead of where he was. Trump is ahead of where he was on the issue of crime from his first term. Take a listen to what Harry Enton had to say about that.
Democrats have to get it around their heads that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than they think that they are. What are we talking about? Trump's net approval handling crime. Where was he last year? He was way underwater at minus 13 points, views of term number one. But look at where he is now. He's on the positive side of the ledger. He's on the positive side at +1 point. Americans view Trump far more favorably now on crime than they did a year ago.
Harry Enton, CNN, right there. And that's why whether it's Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, or Quentin Lucas, our Kansas City mayor, these guys and gals got to be careful because they get caught up in their bubble. They get caught up being surrounded by sycophants who are like, yeah, we're going to get him this time. What's the evidence that suggests this is the issue that you're going to get this guy on? Especially when you've been running these major American cities for decades, and there's almost no evidence that suggests your policies are working or turning things around, especially over the last few years. 913-4087-957. Happy Friday. Glad you're here on KCMO Talk Radio. Let's go to Victor in Parkville. Vic, you're on KCMO. What's up, my man?
Oh, Pete. I hate that. This is so frustrating, and I hate to keep beating this drum. Yes, maybe a lot of people are. Oh, we need to stop the crime. We need to get the criminals off the street. But unfortunately, if you look at the ballot measures that keep getting passed, they'd rather do something for child care or more money for the schools. When it comes to building the jails, which are at capacity, they don't want to build the jails. You have to have some place to put the criminals. You can get them off the street only if you got some place to put them. They won't do it in Platte County. They're not doing it in Jackson County. Clay County's almost completely full, if they're not full already. There's no place to put the criminals. People, build freaking jails. 85%.
They're building,
of the people.
They're building one in Kansas City. Now, it's not going to be open for a couple of years, and they should have never shut down the jail going back, over 10 years now. So they are building that jail. But you're right. It took way too long to come to that conclusion. This thing should have been up and running years ago.
Absolutely. Studies show, and it's been out there plenty of times, a majority of the crime is perpetrated by a minority of the criminals. If you take 5 to 10% of those criminals off of the streets and you keep them off of the streets, violent crime comes down. Everything comes down. And then what they're going to be doing, I love what Judge Janine's going to be doing in Washington, prosecute the children as adults because the gang members are using the kids because that's a revolving door through the juvenile system.
Yeah. Hey, and don't forget there in Platte County, you're right, that you guys rejected a proposed jail expansion last year.
Don't even remind me. I know. We tried. But they gave money to some psychological whatever thing for kids that's it's some sort of NGO that's there's no monitoring where the money goes.
That's right. All right, hang tight up there.
I'm moving to Texas.
I'm moving to Texas. Don't do that. We got it good up here in Kansas and Missouri. Hang tight, Victor, all right?
All right, thank you. So you have a good weekend.
Please. Texas is getting a little nutty down there. I was in Texas a year ago in Dallas. I didn't even recognize the place. I mean, I felt like I was in a third world country with the road closures and the traffic. And, everything was just, honestly, it was kind of a dump. Stephen in Johnson County, go.
Hey, Doc, how's it going?
It's going well, my man. What's happening?
I just want to say that, the reason why they don't want it because crime pays. Have you ever noticed that when they have murder scenes, how many detectives are on the scene? They have a lot of detectives. Crime paid, and then they benefit off the public's ignorance, so they keep voting for the same people all the time because they become conditioned, their mind becomes conditioned to be like they are. That's the reason why they try to make Donald Trump out to be the racist and he's this, he's that, because it kills their jobs. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think detectives with KCPD are like fired up that they've got more homicide cases than they can handle, and they're sitting there saying, well, I'm just glad I've got all these cases because it means I'll stay employed.
Well, if you go to murder scenes most times, look at all the detectives that they see at one crime scene.
Well, I will say this to your point, Stephen, and I appreciate the call. If you want to make the case that KCPD and other departments are top-heavy, too many people at the top levels and not enough people, patrolling. Now, you can make that case. And I'm sure there's plenty of that. I just got to do a little more digging on the numbers. 7:05, 8:05 on the East Coast. That's where President Trump is leaving right now, departing Washington, D.C. for his face-to-face meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. That is going to be taking place at 2 o'clock Central Time this afternoon as they try to figure out a way to end the Russia-Ukraine war. So as news breaks from this trip, we'll hear about it right here on KCMO Talk Radio. But looking at Air Force One, which is on the runway, getting set to depart Joint Base Andrews, as President Trump trying to do his best to bring this war and all the bloodshed from the last few years to an end. But it's a long way to go for a guy who says he'll know in 2 minutes whether or not this is a waste of his time. He's going to fly. What will it take? It's got to be at least a 6, 7, 8 hour trip on Air Force One to get to Anchorage, Alaska. So you're talking about a 12 to 16 hour round trip. And in 2 minutes, Trump will realize whether or not this is a waste of his time. You do what you got to do, I guess. It's part of the job. Duty calls. Now, the president has to be very careful about something on the economic front. So we know that the president wants to see interest rates come down, right? And the Fed may very well acquiesce coming up next month. It wouldn't shock me. Odds are they will end up reducing interest rates by 0.25 percentage point. Not a big cut, but it's a little something. Because you got a lot of things going on right now. You've got the job market potentially softening a hair. You have inflation still a little higher than you'd want it to be at 2.7%. The Fed target is at 2% inflation. People are still feeling the pinch. Remember, prices are never going down. It was just about how to figure out how to make sure they go up at as slow a rate as possible while also not hurting the economy at large. But then yesterday, some bad news came down. Wholesale prices rose at the fastest pace in 3 years. So the producer price index increased 0.9%, the biggest monthly surge since June of 2022. That was peak inflationary period. So what does this mean? Well, part of what this means is that it seems like what's going on is that for now, corporations and businesses are eating the cost of tariffs. Their prices are going up. That's what wholesale prices are. Their prices are going up. They're just not passing it on to the consumer, ... yet. That's why you're not seeing a big spike in the inflation number. But they can't do it forever. The fact that wholesale prices have gone up means that basically you're in a situation right now where inflation could very well be on the horizon. I hope it's not. But either way, it's already been higher than ideally you want it to be, right? I mean, at 2.7, 2.8%, when the target's 2, you might say that's close. I look at it and I say that's still 40, 50% above where you want it to be. So yesterday, Trump's in the Oval Office, and, he's talking about the economy and inflation and all these different things. And I just don't want him to fall into the same trap that Joe Biden fell into when talking about the economy.
We're also fighting the menace of inflation to make life more affordable for American seniors, and we've ended Biden's inflation nightmare. So we had the worst inflation in the history of our country. And now our inflation is down to a perfect number, a beautiful number, hardly.
No. Please don't talk about beautiful numbers, perfect numbers. People are still feeling the pinch, okay? Prices are way too high. Don't do the Biden thing where you whistle past the graveyard and say everything's great. Everything's perfect. I mean, that's what Biden would do. He'd say, oh, it's okay. It's transitory. Look at the stock market. Everything's fine. And regular folks were like, no, it's not. Please don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Please don't do it. Like, no, it's not at a perfect number. Now, it's not bad. It's certainly better than where it was. But please don't try to sell the American people on something that is just not factually accurate. While I'm all in on these economic policies, you have to be able to acknowledge that there is still a lot of pain out there. That's step one in any of this.
Any at all. And yet our country's taking in tens of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars, actually trillions of dollars in tariffs. And you know all about it. It's been amazing. They say, why are we taking in so much money? Last week they found $29 billion and they couldn't figure out where it came from. I said, check the tariff shelf. And they said, how did you know that's where it came from?
Check the tariff shelf. Something tells me that Trump's got a shelf in the Oval Office that he actually has dubbed the tariff shelf, and he probably walks over there and checks it on a daily basis. But, you know, the other thing about the tariffs is like, listen, I understand what he's going for. I think free and fair trade is the ultimate goal here, as it should be. But people don't inherently feel the tariffs coming into the Treasury, right? It's just like the debt. The debt is this big number of $37 trillion. But what politicians realized on both sides is that no one really cares about it. It's just this kind of big, scary number, but people can't figure out how to process that number and apply it to their day-to-day lives. So that's why the politicians just keep ramping it up, right? And just kicking the can down the road. The tariff number, it's like, okay, so there's $30 billion a month in tariffs going into the Treasury. All right. And how am I feeling that? What does that mean for me? Why is that good for me? It's just, once again, this big number that no one really can latch on to, that doesn't really have anything of substance and mean anything to most people. But if the tariffs result in potential inflation, and the number that came out yesterday, the wholesale producer price index that came out yesterday, which was the highest number in 3 years since peak Biden years of inflation. If that does lead to inflation because the companies are not going to eat the tariffs forever, then people are going to say, okay, I'm glad that you're collecting all these tariffs, but my prices are going up. So what's that do for me? How does this work for me? And that's why I think ultimately trade deals need to be figured out as quickly as possible. Tariffs across the board need to come down as quickly as possible to get to that free and fair trade. And then you won't have the companies considering potentially passing these costs on to the American people. That's the big concern right now. And that's why you got to be careful in saying everything's perfect and everything's great. Because there's one thing worse than not trying to solve the issue. And the president, I believe, is trying big picture solve the issue with good general economic policy. But not acknowledging people's pain. It's just like Frank White here in Jackson County. Not only has Frank White been a wildly incompetent county executive in Jackson County, but the worst part of it all is that when it came to these tax assessments for people's homes in Jackson County, he just whistled right on past the graveyard. He didn't give one rip. He didn't share and show an ounce of empathy for any single homeowner in Jackson County the last few years, as people were on the verge of getting squeezed out of their homes. Now, Trump's a much better politician than Frank White could ever dream of being. So he's got it. He's just got to make sure he walks that fine line of saying, yes, this is what I want. I want to see rate cuts. I think it'll work. Here's why my tariff policy is going to also play out positively for the American people. But also, you got to keep that empathy there. You got to understand that people have been dealing with 5 years of price increases. They're squeezed more than ever. Credit card debt is at all-time highs. People can't get into the homeowner business right now. You know, there's more homeowners or there's more home buyers over the age of 70 than there are under the age of 35. First time that's happened in American history. I saw it yesterday. That's not good. You got older people buying second, third homes, right? People under 35 are like, I can't get ahead here. I can't find a down payment. I got 6-7% interest rates.
Well, everybody's looking at the same house as people my age or older are probably looking to downsize.
There's some of that, too. You're right. You're right about that. Maybe it's downsizing. But either way, there is still a lot of pain out there. And I don't think using the word perfect about the economy is the play, even if your policies are the right ones. And I believe that they are. It's going to take time. It's going to take time. You know, someone's on the ballot in Wyandotte County who shot a man last fall. Yeah, I feel like I read some of the headlines around this story, but for whatever reason, last night I found myself doing a deep dive into it. And I'm looking at this story and I'm like, this is Wyandotte County politics in a nutshell. You can vote for someone who shot a man last fall, John.
That's a Lucas Kuntz plan. I think. Got the same consultant, maybe.
Oh, man, old Lucas Kuntz tries to take out Josh Hawley. Before he does that, he shoots a guy at a gun range up there in Clay County. Way to go, buddy. Nice job. Lisa Walker Yeager, who shot a man last fall, had a hearing yesterday afternoon where a Wyandotte County district judge did not rule whether the political candidate qualifies for self-defense immunity. So after attorneys questioned Walker Yeager and her daughter for about 2 hours, Judge Michael A. Russell decided the defense and state prosecutors must submit their findings, facts, and conclusions to the court by September 12th, next month. After those statements are filed, Russell said he'd schedule a hearing and make his ruling from the bench. So I'll get to the story here in terms of what happened, why she's claiming self-defense. It's over a check to a contractor who did some work for her. But I'm just asking you this, no matter what, would you vote for somebody in Wyandotte County this November? Politics aside, would you vote for somebody who is right now dealing with the court system for shooting a guy? I don't know how you do it. I don't. And leave it to Wyandotte County to get this person to a general election. They had the primaries a couple of weeks back, and now she's getting ready for November. In between that, she's going to be appearing in court on shooting a guy. So here's the report, Channel 9 KMBC, the cockman himself, Andy Alcock.
We found out today this entire dispute, which resulted in gunfire, was over $60. A contractor wanted $410 for work done on Walker Yeager's home. She tried to pay him $360. The daughter and the contractor had what turned out to be a physical and also verbal altercation. Both of them captured it on cell phone video. When Walker Yeager heard her daughter scream, the contractor went to his truck. She thought he was trying to get a gun. She grabbed a gun out of her purse and testified she opened fire 6 or 7 times. The contractor's mother tells us he was hit in the back once. As Walker Yeager left the courtroom earlier today, we tried to ask her a couple of questions. Lisa, can you tell us why you decided to testify on your own behalf today?
No comments, Sergeant. Thank you. Come on.
Well, not at all. What about running for office with this kind of charge facing you? Can you explain why you did that?
I can't.
No comment.
No comment. I was advised from my attorney. No comments, sir. Sorry.
Andy Alcock, Channel 9. I'm not a forensic detective or crime scene investigator, but when you open fire on a guy and, according to reports, you shoot him in the back because you thought he was going back to his vehicle to get a gun, I'm not sure that you're going to have a great stance on self-defense here. And this was over $60. $60. The contractor claimed that Walker Yeager owed him $410, and she gave him a check for $350. Now, you know, we've all been in situations where you pay a contractor for the work, right? If you don't get the price ahead of time, that's kind of on you. That happened to me once. There was one time, called a guy who had done a bunch of work for me. I had some things I needed fixed up around the house, and he gave me an hourly rate, right? Little did I know, he brought a second guy with him, and basically he charged an hourly rate for both of them per hour. So it was really double the number of what I thought it was going to be. But you know what? I didn't clarify it, and I kind of just bit the bullet, and I said, you know what? I learned a lesson on that. But you got Walker Yeager getting into a $60 dispute and shooting the guy in the back over it, according to these reports, this contractor. And now she's on the ballot coming up in November in Wyandotte County for both an at-large seat on the Board of Public Utilities and the Unified Government Commission District 1 seat.
Mm-hmm.
Woo, man.
I'm like, how does all this work?
This is just wild.
Well, I figure it's like when she goes around and goes, "You're voting for me, aren't you?"
Yeah.
You think twice, wouldn't you?
I mean,
Sure, both times.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And if not, you never know what's in her purse. Holy cow.
Door knocking is going to be something else.
Yeah. I mean, jeez. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. You know who would have been prepared for that visit to the front door? Andrew Lester. That guy would have been prepped. All right. Steve in KCK. Go ahead, Steve.
Pete, this is Crime County. I grew up over here. That act alone probably earned her 1,000 more votes. That's better than having a PhD in Wyandotte County.
Jeez. Oh, man. So you think that this gives her, what, street credibility or something like that?
Absolutely. She will be mayor, probably running for mayor in the next 4 years or something. You know?
Are you kidding me? Oh, my gosh. Don't give these local politicians any ideas, man. We got KCMO elections coming up here in a couple of years. They're going to be stealing from this Wyandotte County lady.
Yeah, I'm a little sad. My guy Phil Lopez lost to a guy who was endorsed by the Kansas City Star, and he was endorsed by the Kansas City Star. Told me everything I needed to know about comp. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, all right, Steve. Thank you. 913-408-7957. She'll be mayor in no time. What a scary thought. Unbelievable. On the text line, Pete, her campaign slogan, vote for me or I'll shoot you. Yeah, I mean, I guess that might work in some people's estimations. Man, this is wild. And then I got Steve calling from KCK saying this is going to help her in the polls. Well, here's the thing. When you talk about these elections, let's be honest, no one knows any of these people. All right, Board of Public Utilities, Commissioner, District 1 seat. She will have name ID. People are not going to know why they know her name, but they'll see this name in the news, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, Walker Yeager, I've seen her name around, and they won't remember why. They won't put 2 and 2 together and be like, oh, she's the lady who shot somebody in the back over a $60 dispute. Oh, yeah, I mean, they won't be able to make that connection probably in the polling booth. Not because they're dumb, but just because people aren't totally locked into some of this stuff, these super local elections. But when push comes to shove, you look at this and you're like, you going to vote for that person? You really think that that person is capable of representing anybody, never mind Wyandotte County residents, but anybody, when you talk about the Board of Public Utilities and Unified Government Commissioner District 1 seat? Who could possibly get on board with that? And you know what? I mean, she's going to claim, obviously is claiming self-defense. But when you're shooting someone in the back because you thought they were going back to their truck to get a gun, boy, you better have damn good evidence of that. Because right now, that thing stinks to high heaven. And my goodness, local media is treating her with major kid gloves. You know and I know, if the colors were different in this case, let's just be real. Different colors, different outcome in local media. I mean, they're just playing this one straight down the middle as like local news, and I get it, that's fine. But they would be treating this much differently if there were different shades involved here. You know that, and I know that. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line and our text line on KCMO. Pete, I heard all her speeches will be short because they're just bullet points. Oh, my goodness.
I love that.
How dare you?
Oh, come on now. Take it easy on the text line. Everyone's a comedian on a Friday. Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. That's too much. That is just too much. But you guys are on fire this morning. I like it. No pun intended there either. Well done, everybody. Nice job. It's 7:43. We've got a busy 8 o'clock hour ahead here on KCMO. We're going to have Lieutenant General Richard Newton out of News Nation. He'll be checking in on the Trump-Putin summit that is set for 2 o'clock this afternoon in Alaska. The Trump Air Force One is taken off from Washington, D.C., so they are en route to Alaska right now, and they will be landing and meeting with Putin at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So the coverage will be happening during the Guy Benson Show here on KCMO Talk Radio. Coming up next, it was a historic moment that a lot of you ragged on me for covering yesterday. But the data backs this up. I'll share the numbers with you next on 95.7 FM KCMO. I mean, the numbers are what the numbers are. You can't deny the numbers here. So the New Heights podcast the other night with Taylor Swift, look at these numbers. 1.3 million live concurrent viewers, which makes it the most watched YouTube show in real time of any show done in live YouTube history. Prior to that, it was Joe Rogan with President Trump, then candidate Trump last fall. They did 800,000 live concurrent viewers. Now, of course, you get millions and millions of views after the fact, but live concurrent viewers. Joe Rogan and candidate Trump at the time did 800,000 last fall. Travis Kelce, Jason Kelce, and Taylor Swift 2 nights ago, 1.3 million.
And they're already up to 14 million views.
On the show itself?
On the full show, yeah.
Woo, man. So to the haters who are mad that we talked about this yesterday, well, I'm sorry. This was a historic event 2 nights ago. And it was, I mean, I think they were filming this thing, at least Travis and Taylor, right down the road here in Kansas City. What are you possibly upset about with this, John?
I find it remarkable. I'm sure people watching this are going, I hate them. They suck. They look like they're having fun. You know, the hate watching is funny.
It reminds me of the movie Private Parts with Howard Stern, when they're having this meeting with the executives, and they're like, look at these ratings. Howard's doing great. You know, his time spent listening is crazy. The numbers are up, everything else. And one of the other executives said, well, what about the people that hate him? Here's the crazy part. They're watching even more, listening even more. It's the same exact thing here, right? I mean, yeah, there's definitely the vast majority of people who watch that who like Taylor and like Travis and like the show. But don't kid yourself. Hate watching is real in media. Hate listening is real in media. Now, of course, nobody would ever hate listen to this show. That would no way that would ever happen. Just look at the text line. Trust me. There's a lot of people hate listening. If I look at the text line and go through those, I just can't read them on the air. That's why I don't do it, because I don't want to have to bleep myself or slip something through the cracks and Mark's got to dump me because I read a hater's text. So I don't do a lot of it. But trust me, it's a real thing in media, John.
Well, you'll note the fortitude. So many appear on the air here as callers.
Yeah.
I guess they think they're doing a mic drop on me sometimes. You know? That's funny.
On X, I posted this last night, these numbers, 1.3 million concurrent viewers for Travis and Taylor and Jason the other night. That sets a YouTube record. Luke writes, I'm loving this. Haven't even watched it yet, but I'm reveling in the fact that Kansas City is all over people's timelines. Been in Chiefs Kingdom for 47 years, and this run has been absolutely fantastic. Also, Jan writes here, knowing very little about her, I was enlightened as to how impressive and approachable she seemed to be. I'd be comfortable baking with her, but we would steer clear of politics. That's it.
Perfect.
You know what? That's perfect. That is perfect, Jan. That's how life is supposed to be. We can't be picking friends exclusively based on politics. I don't want to live in that world. Okay, I don't. Some of my best friends growing up disagree with me on politics. I am never going to let that get in the way of our friendship. Some of you might feel otherwise, and I suppose, obviously, it's America. You're entitled to that. But we don't become better as a culture. We don't become better as a country if we continue to retreat into our bubbles and only interact with people who tell us exactly what we want to hear. It's not good for a relationship. It's not good for a marriage. I don't think it's good for a friendship. I don't think it's good in the workplace, John.
Takes two to tango. I don't tango.
Yeah.
I don't think you do either, right?
No way.
It takes two. So.
Not a chance, man. Not a chance. But this thing did a record number, and it was a pop culture moment, and it was a Kansas City moment, too. So any show yesterday in Kansas City that was not talking about this was doing a disservice to its listeners. And if you disagree,
you mustard.
That's all I got for you. That's it. Now, speaking of cultural moments, we got this sign outside of the studio. We've had it up for, it might be 4 years now. We have a plaque right outside our KCMO studios here. And the plaque says, "It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day." That quote comes from the esteemed former Vice President Kamala Harris. So it's a plaque. It sits right above the studio. Right before I walk in, I tap it every morning, just like the Notre Dame Play Like a Champion sign. Before they walk out of the tunnel, they tap the Play Like a Champion sign. I tap my Kamala Harris plaque. And Mark and John do the same thing. They walk by the studio. They tap the plaque. They go into their studio. I tap the plaque. I come into my studio. It just gives us, it gives us that extra juice we need at 5:55 in the morning before we get on the air. I also think it makes me smarter. Just something inherently about that plaque just makes me brighter every day. So, we've got 6 radio stations here. And for the first time the other day, this plaque's been up there for 4 years, right? Maybe it's 3. Whenever she said that ridiculously stupid quote, that's when the plaque went up. One of our listeners works in the plaque industry and made it for us.
All-Star Awards.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So it's been there for years. I had one of the guys with the urban station down the hallway who saw it for the first time. And he stops me coming out of the show the other day. He goes, "What's with the plaque?" I'm like, "What do you mean, what's with the plaque? Plaque's been there for years." He's like, "Is that serious?" I'm like, "Well, have you read the quote? You tell me." He goes, "What's wrong with the quote?" I'm like, "Really?"
Show some RESPICT.
What's wrong with the quote? I said, "You tell me. You read that quote. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day." I said, "You tell me. What does that mean?" He's like, "It's a nice quote." I'm like, "What?" I said, "Read the quote and tell me what that means." He looks at me perplexed. And he goes, "Yeah, I guess I don't really know what that means." I said, "That's the point. It doesn't mean anything. There's no meaning to it. It's just words that might sound nice when you hear them, but when you dig below the surface, there's no meaning to that quote." He's like, "Yeah, I guess." And then I just literally, I didn't know what else to say. I just kind of walked away. It's like, "All right, we're good. You done here? We're all set?" Okay.
There's something wrong with them.
I don't know. It was bizarre. But I had to share that with you because I hadn't talked about the plaque in a while here.